Hello, everybody. Hello, welcome. How are
Hey,
you
happy to
doing
be
today?
here.
It's a good day for this. How's your day going?
Great, great. You can hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
Excellent,
Um,
excellent. Hello, everyone.
Welcome, everybody. We're coming to you live from San Francisco. Feel free to drop in the chat where you're coming from today. If there's anything you'd really like to get out of today's session, we'll definitely hold some time at the end for Q&A. So we always love hearing from you guys.
Yeah, please ask lots of questions. It's the more controversial, the better. Um,
Perfect.
but yeah, we can talk about 503Bs, 503As, category one, category two, peptides, all that good stuff.
Yeah, all the
Uh,
changes. I feel like it's I'm sure everybody gets their daily updates. But yeah, it's wild how quickly things are changing on a daily
and
basis.
I know people stress about it, but this is really the milieu. This is the standard life of a compounding pharmacist. There's always changes. This is like totally normal for them. That's why they're so much less up in arms about different changes because they're like, okay, well, that's just today's change
Yeah, exactly.
or today's
Uh,
third change.
yeah, there was just a question in the chat about yes, we will share the replay out after this. We can go ahead and get started. I'm Katya. I'm one of the founders at MedBio. Always happy to have Dr. Kaplan, who from Dr. Well and Mino Meds with us. So yes, if you have questions as he goes through the presentation, feel free drop them in the chat. We will record this. We'll send it out to everybody afterwards. And with that, I will pass it to you, Dr. Kaplan, to jump in.
That's great. Thank you so much. Yes, hello everyone. I know I've met some of you before through other MedBio Institute programs, and always enjoy working with you. But I'm Jonathan Kaplan. I'm a board certified plastic surgeon in San Francisco. And my origin story, in addition to practicing as a plastic surgeon, we had patients coming in, as a plastic surgeon, why do we get into the whole GLP-1 weight and wellness space? And when I tell you, it makes perfect sense. We had patients coming in for, body contouring procedures, liposuction, mommy makeovers, and their BMI was too high. They weren't good candidates for surgery. So rather than turning them away, our nurse and nurse practitioner suggested we start a weight and wellness program. And this is even before the Ozempic craze and everything. And so the nurse and nurse practitioner wanted to really offer coaching, phentermine, whatever medications were available. And then the shortage began, and we started being able to get semaglutide, then tirzepatide from the compounding pharmacies. And we had a viral TikTok. Um, uh, and so we ended up having a lot of patients coming in. And so that's where Dr. Well was born, is that we were able to then accommodate all of these patients because we had them set up on subscriptions and all that. And then we've since expanded to where over 200 providers across the country are using our platform to offer to administrate their weight and wellness program. And as I'll get to towards the end of the presentation, I'll explain why, even if you don't think in your mind that you're trying to compete against Roe and Hims, you'll need to be able to, just from the consumer interface perspective. And I'll explain all of that. And that's what we do. Is Dr. Well gives you the technology so you don't have to build out that infrastructure, so you can better compete and give patients what they're looking for, the ease of use, and also helping you with compliance, which I'll also get into. But then separately, within that, our nurse practitioner realized one day that patients who were on semaglutide and weren't losing as much weight, didn't have as much appetite suppression. We switched them over to tirzepatide, and they had more appetite suppression. But then they noticed that they were thinking about food more. They had more food noise once they moved from semaglutide to tirzepatide. And that's how she came up with the idea of combining semaglutide and tirzepatide, and we called that GLP-1 squared. And so we've now created a spinoff company from Dr. Well called Mino Meds, where we're actively going through the process of getting semaglutide and tirzepatide, one of our novel formulations, approved as an investigational new drug through the FDA. So that's what I want to talk about today, is not only novel formulations, but also novel stacks, or novel ways of being able to provide patients stacks in a very regimented but clean cut, legitimate, organized way, rather than you just trying to manually keep track of all these different stacks. So if somebody could mention in the chat, in the webinar chat, if you could just let me know, confirm, I'm assuming you can hear me. I'm assuming you can see me. Let me know if you don't. But also make it clear that you can see my presentation right now. It says Beyond the GLP-1 Price War, Meds, MedBio Institute logos on the right. Great. We can see your presentation. All right, let's get started. Thank y'all very much. Okay, so let's start with unique formulations. I've already told you the background of how we came up with these Dr. Well and Meds, but let's get into the novel formulations. So, yes, I mentioned that the combination can help with food noise, but what we're also noticing, and there may be a place for this combination novel formulation in alcohol use disorder. Alcohol use disorder affects over 28 million US adults that they've been actually diagnosed with this. And that the FDA is currently approved several agents, but they're low adherence. They're old medications. There's three medications, and mostly oral medications. High relapse rate, significant medical, social, economic burden, and so we think there's a great opportunity for a mechanistically novel approach, and I'll get into that in a second. But there is a significant association. I'm not saying that every person with alcohol use disorder is obese, but there is a significant association. So if we're talking about using GLP-1s to treat people with alcohol use disorder and curb their cravings, you do have to recognize that some of these patients will lose weight. And whether they need to lose weight or not. And that's one of the great things about this novel formulation, which I'll talk about. We call it GLP-1 squared, came up with a clever name for it. It's the two medications, not really squared because one squared is one, but it's just a fancy name of combining semaglutide and tirzepatide in lower doses. And that's what's really critical is because we're using lower doses of each than either medication if it was used alone in a commercially standardized dose, that because it's a lower dose of each, it still has its benefit, which I'll get into those mechanisms in a second. But because it's lower doses, it actually reduces the amount of weight they lose at the lower doses if they don't want to lose weight. If they do want to lose weight, then they can always go up to the higher combined doses. But what we're finding is that it's helping with food noise and appetite suppression. At this point, this is anecdotal. We're working on using this in our patients actively. We're using it off label, all legal. But it is a combo of semaglutide, tirzepatide. Because these are two individually approved medications, you can use them together off label, totally legal. Again, a lower dose of each medication. And we do source these from a 503A pharmacy, multiple 503A pharmacies. And we're seeing a potential benefit in the motivation reward system, the limbic system. And this is how it helps with all addictive behaviors, overeating, but also alcohol use disorder, even opioids. And the reason we think that GLP-1 squared may offer a stronger rationale for single therapy for alcohol use disorder is that, remember, it's GLP-1, is semaglutide is GLP-1, tirzepatide is GLP-1 and GIP. Because they're overlapping on those receptors, but they're also not identical receptors, that there may be different downstream effects. Even though you have two different molecules attached to the same GLP-1 receptor, they may actually have different downstream effects. It's very interesting. And with that parallel stimulation, it can have a broader coverage of effects on the brain to reduce the parts of the brain that are driving craving, reward, impulsivity, and relapse. And then the combination, which we'll talk about, is maybe actually keeping the cell on the cell surface, the receptor, the GLP-1 receptor on the cell surface for longer, so it can actually work longer in chronic use. And then, as I mentioned already, that lower dose can also reduce the side effect burden, but also reduce the weight loss burden in certain patients if you don't want weight loss. And I'm not talking about it won't cause weight loss in anybody. I'm just saying that if you are specifically staying with the lowest dose, again, these are lower doses than the standard commercial doses of GLP-1 squared, that it will have less weight loss benefit, but it's still, but that's not why you're using it. In that case, if you're trying to use it specifically for cravings for people who are not overweight to begin with. So this is just an overview of the protein structure of semaglutide and tirzepatide. Tirzepatide's a little bit bigger and also, as I mentioned, binds to the GLP-1 and GIP receptor, the glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor, and the gastric inhibitory peptide, or if you want to take the alternative name for the GIP, it's a glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide. And just to review for this, for those of you who may already not know, that with semaglutide, it is a full agonist, really strong, binds very strongly to the GLP-1 receptor, but has no GIP receptor activity. Tirzepatide, it is a partial agonist with the GLP-1 receptor, does bind, but not as strong as semaglutide, and has that leads to the different downstream effects. And then, of course, tirzepatide also binds to the GIP receptor. So the reason we think this is working for patients with alcohol use disorder in the benefit of it is that if you just have semaglutide binding to the receptor, that can reduce cravings, but that works through a pathway. It activates the receptor through a pathway where there is an increased beta arrestin recruitment. So I'm highlighting this protein right here, beta arrestin, and there's more recruitment of beta arrestin. What that means is that as the semaglutide binds to the GLP-1 receptor, beta arrestin comes in and eventually causes internalization of that GLP-1 receptor, which is why some of you may have noticed that the longer patients are on semaglutide, the effect doesn't last as long as it once did once they first got on it. So they become more desensitized because the receptor, because of the activation pathway, the receptor is starting to internalize, and then there's no receptor on the outside of the cell for semaglutide to work. However, if tirzepatide is binding to the GLP-1 receptor, it goes through a different pathway, not the beta arrestin pathway. It goes through a cyclic AMP pathway that does not increase the amount of beta arrestin protein being generated, which that then reduces the internalization of the GLP-1 receptor. So by having tirzepatide in the mix, it's keeping GLP-1 receptor on the outside of the cell longer. So that's why it may work on a longer and a more chronic way. So you still got both of these molecules binding to the receptor, both helping with saturating the receptors, both affecting the craving and reward system in the hypothalamus, the hindbrain, the ventral tegmental area, reducing appetite, reducing reward salience, meaning that you have this outsized motivation or drive to get that thing back that you know you're probably not supposed to have. And it's also reducing the alcohol cue-driven dopamine spikes. And it just reduces those craving signals across the board. Semaglutide does, tirzepatide does too. But the difference is now with tirzepatide in the mix, it's has that favorable beta arrestin bias, meaning that the beta arrestin is not internalizing the GLP-1 receptor, maintaining sensitivity to both semaglutide and tirzepatide. The tirzepatide dampens the dopaminergic firing of the ventral tegmental area, and that's what's reducing alcohol use disorder relapse. Anyway, so these are the reasons these both work, but the reason the benefit of having tirzepatide involved is that it keeps the receptor out there longer. But again, at the end of the day, tirzepatide also doesn't bind as strongly to the GLP-1 receptor as semaglutide, so you still have those great effects from the semaglutide. So you really need both of them that you can't get on their own. The monotherapy, especially if you're having to increase the dose monotherapy, it can obviously lead to some tolerability issues with GI nausea, vomiting, things like that. But then with that dual therapy at the lower doses, you've got both your receptors covered. You've got that inhibition of the receptor internalization, keeping it on the outside of the cell longer. Broadens the neural impact, as I mentioned. You've got the neurocircuitry covered on all fronts. And then it avoids those side effect profiles. So we're basically maximizing efficacy via this synergistic pathway while minimizing the dosage toxicity with dose reduction. So how we're using GLP-1 squared in our practice since April of 2025. So this is over a year we've been using it in our patients that we've submitted over, I'm sorry, not just in our practice, but across the entire Dr. Well network. We've submitted over 1,200 orders, a total of 1,300 plus vials, 57 unique providers that are offering it. As I mentioned before, we're working with a contract research organization, the CRO, to submit GLP-1 squared to the FDA as an investigational new drug, specifically for the indication of alcohol use disorder. So right now we're using it for weight loss, any off-label use, alcohol use disorder, weight loss, any bona fide medical reason, we are able to legally offer this medication off-label. But when it comes to the FDA indication, we're specifically looking at alcohol use disorder for all the aforementioned reasons. So to conclude with this part of the presentation, as far as the novel formulations, this co-administration yields higher GLP-1 receptor occupancy by both semaglutide and tirzepatide, but then prolonged bias, prolonged externalization of the receptor on the outside of the cell. So this continues to work for a longer period of time, even at lower doses. That's the effect of tirzepatide. And then, of course, you've got the full GIP receptor activation with the tirzepatide, which semaglutide can't do. So you end up creating a three-pronged approach or three-pathway neuroendocrine way of having these benefits, these effects at lower dosages, lowering the tolerability issues that neither drug alone can replicate. So very exciting what we're doing with that. And it's because it is a novel combination and because it's at lower non-commercial doses, then it's less affected by the FDA enforcement for other compounded GLP-1s. We're always hearing about the things going on in the news about 503As or 503Bs. It's really a different situation between the two. But this is something that is actually a medication combination that you could use now that gives you more protection because you can't really reasonably combine both of these medications commercially. It's going to involve two different injections, of course. So, and obviously, the name brand drugs are never going to recommend that you combine the two medications. So, this is a novel way of doing this that is potentially more resistant to FDA changes that may be going on in relation to the rest of the compounded medications. So, very exciting, and it's a unique offering to your patients. So, while there's price pressures on semaglutide or tirzepatide alone, and you're having to reduce the price to compete. That's not necessarily the case with this combination medication because patients can't get this, and they may say, "Oh, well, I can just order it research grade online, two different vials, and give myself two different injections." But there's multiple things wrong with what I just described that the patients may be thinking that might be their way of doing it. So obviously, combining them both in the same vial from a 503A pharmacy, you know it's sterile, and you can do it with one injection. That's obviously the better, more legal and appropriate compliant route to go. So now I want to get to unique multi-drug treatment plans, or what the kids are calling stacks. And the thing is that stacks are nothing new, not at all. But the way you have to provide a stack treatment to a patient with multiple medications in multiple orders, probably coming from multiple different pharmacies, it's not sustainable. You can't do that at scale. It's just too many different medications coming from too many different places. And also with these stacks, you're not necessarily sending out the medication at the same time. Some medications, will last you for 28 days, some for 3 months. And so it just keeping track of that, when to send out the medication, when to submit it to the pharmacy, when to send it to the patient, when to charge them, when to refund them. And if they've already gotten some medications, what do you refund? That's all very, very complicated. In addition to the fact that if you're running all this through your regular EMR credit card processor, which is not a high risk payment processor, you're getting in trouble. So I'll get into more of that in detail in a second. But we have to think about the fact that you're not just a GLP-1 practice anymore. You're not just a peptide practice. You're offering lots of things, and you need to be able to offer comprehensive medication offerings. So, for example, you want to offer a hormone replacement. Well, that's probably one specific pharmacy you're getting that from, whether it's hormone injectables, creams, or pellets. That's coming from multiple places. So you need one pharmacy for the male hormone therapy, for the female hormone therapy. But you also have patients who are interested in thyroid medication, metabolic issues that you can address. That's a different pharmacy. Then you're looking for peptides, 503A pharmacy if you can find one. Otherwise, it's research grade. But then if you're a naturopathic provider, you're probably using mast cell stabilizers like cromolyn and ketotifen. But then there's also issues for sexual wellness, like keeping people interested in sex, not just erectile dysfunction. But then also pharmaceutical grade skin care, hair care, vitamin therapy for your IV therapy, and then of course GLP-1. So those are all the medications that, if you're not already offering them, you want to offer them because you're going to get tired of telling your patients no. And the reason you're telling patients no that you don't offer certain medications is because you don't want to have to go out and find yet another compounding pharmacy and get yet another set of login credentials and find and learn how to use yet another pharmacy portal and then have to put in the patient's information again, that double data entry yet again, even though you've already got it in your EMR. So all those things, these are all the things that are holding you back from offering multiple medications, multiple treatments for patients, because it's a hassle, it's a pain. You got to find different pharmacies for it. So with our platform, we have one portal for all meds, and between all of our pharmacy partners, we can cover all states. And that's what the big benefit is here, is that you're not having to log into different portals. And plus, let's not even talk about the fact that because we have all of these providers all across the country that are ordering so much medications through Dr. Well, that we're able to get lower cost of goods than you'll ever be able to get on your own. And they don't care that you have 100 patients. They don't even care if you have 1,000 patients. You got to have 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 patients before they start to give you better rates on your cost of goods. So with multi-medication packages, why does stacking work? Well, let's just look at each one of these columns. So if you're thinking about the therapy for hormone replacement therapy, well, If you look at the second column, that fixes hormone imbalances, certainly, but it misses weight loss. They even found that while testosterone can help with weight loss, once you add GLP-1s onto the testosterone and you use those synergistic approaches, that it actually helps with both weight loss and insulin regulation. So hormone therapy replacement by itself won't do the trick. But with GLP-1s, it helps with the weight, but obviously everybody's worried about lean body mass loss, which if you just work out, that'll actually minimize the lean body mass loss. But with the GLP-1s, if you're worried about that lean body mass loss or being able to work out and getting injured and be able to get back to working out, then that's when you're going to need peptides. So we're already talking about multiple medications you're going to need to fill your stack. And if you're talking about peptides, it does the repair in the muscle based on anecdotal evidence. But those patients may be older and they may be perimenopausal and they also need hormone therapy. So by offering these stacks together, and I'm not talking about stacks of three different peptides that may or may not do the same thing and you're just making up indications for it. I'm talking about multiple different medication classes as your stack. Because we're used to having patients take medication for cholesterol, a medication for high blood pressure, a medication for restless leg syndrome. But maybe if we treat the underlying causes with a stack, they may not have to take the cholesterol medication anymore, the high blood pressure medication anymore, because they're losing weight and they're feeling better with their hormone therapy. So it's a different way of thinking about what these stacks are. It's not all the crazy bro stacks online I'm talking about multiple medication classes that are helping with patients' wellness before they get sick. So this is one example stack that we got from Dr. Jennifer Thomas, one of our providers. She's a great menopause specialist in addition to a vascular surgeon. But the reason she got into it as a woman is that she was having perimenopause issues, and now she feels better than she ever has. But the way she looks at this for a stack is that in phase one, you stabilize the patient with a good hormone therapy, replacement therapy foundation, obviously checking lab work, but then also instituting some lifestyle changes with high protein diets, strength training, prioritizing sleep. And then in phase two, you can then add in the GLP-1s. This is her one example of a stack, adding in the GLP-1s, addressing the insulin resistance. And then you have better results with the weight gain, reducing metabolic inflammation, which so many patients have, and it means different things to different patients. And then phase three, optimizing with peptides or tesamorelin, because this is a great example that you're losing all this great subcutaneous weight with the GLP-1s, but you still have a pot belly because of that visceral fat inside around your intestines. Then, what's the treatment for that? Well, tesamorelin is a great peptide because it's FDA approved actually for visceral fat for lipodystrophy, HIV lipodystrophy. So it's actually approved for that. You're not even using something that's subject to category one or category two. That's an FDA approved medication that we can get from our 503A pharmacy. And then, of course, you have we have the pharmaceutical grade skincare like Stella that's got a low dose, like estriol in it, and all these great ingredients. But there's also and copper, topical copper. But if you want injectable versions of that, we've got Glode that's got GHKCU, BPC 157, and TB 500, or you can just get the GHKCU by itself. And the BPC 157 for muscle recovery. So this is a way for you to be stacking across multiple medication areas rather than just a few different peptides that may or may not do the same thing and have overlapping results or no overlapping results. But some other examples of a stack is weight loss and hair loss. And what I want to really highlight here is the fact that with these downward pricing pressures on semaglutide or tirzepatide alone, you can actually keep your price point at the same level by bundling medications. But it really only works if you're getting the lowest cost of goods. So here's an example of tirzepatide we can get, and these prices, by the way, include shipping. So don't say, oh, I can get a better rate than that. You might be getting a better rate than that. Either it's research grade or you're not including the shipping. But we can get tirzepatide including the shipping, 2-day shipping for $85.23. And then if you take on the Hair Force One, that's from a different pharmacy, and you get the BPC 157, that's from a different pharmacy. So this is an example that if you're not using us, you're going to have to use three different pharmacies. You're doing this on your own. It's not going to be as inexpensive as this. And so you're not going to, your profit margin is going to dwindle. But with us, by having all three of these and having greater price points, even though they're from three different pharmacies, you can all order them through one portal, and your total cost of goods is $268, including shipping. You can charge the patient $600. And this is a great profit margin. A patient would be willing to pay $600 for all three of these items together and having it sent to them in an organized fashion when they need it, when they're running out of the previous previous refill. So this is a great example of a stack from multiple medication areas. And then I want to show you how this works in our new platform that we've just unveiled. Within our Dr. Well platform, you can have individual medications that you'll send to patients, individual templates, but then you can have an example here, like a stack with weight loss, hair loss, just like the example I gave you. And then you would go into the back end after we help you create these templates of whatever medications you want to include. It doesn't matter if it comes from multiple pharmacies. That's our thing. But you create that package. You can use AI to create a description and confirm that that description is accurate. But then that's just one tab as far as the details. Then you go click on the medication tab, and this is where you can add in or adjust your medications that you want to be included. This is one example of a template, but you can create a template, a stack, however you want from any medication we offer from any of our 503A pharmacies. So in this example, you've got the Hair Force One, and by the way, this will only show you the medications that are legally able to be sent to your state. So we're not going to accidentally give you access to a medication that, like, when it comes time to order, like the pharmacy won't ship to you because they don't have a license in that state. So we're smart enough to provide you with the medication packages, items that you can get in your state. So you got Hair Force One here, and you've got semaglutide with B12, hair loss and weight loss treatment, and then it shows your cost of goods so that you know what you're doing. It shows all the different dosages, so you have this stepwise pattern if you're increasing the dose for the patient. And then you can even add add-ons. Again, this is what you're seeing in the back end of our portal as the provider. And you look at the add-ons, you could add an AD. So, for example, if they're going through the purchase process, they're purchasing that stack of the B12, the semaglutide B12, and the Hair Force One in the example I just showed you. But they're purchasing that together. But then it brings them to another page where, if you choose to offer an add-on, this is an example. You can offer an add-on of NAD, and then they can purchase that as well. And then it comes to the billing. This is where you set all your pricing. You decide what you want to charge. We just show you what the cost of goods are, so you make sure you exceed that. And then you can choose what you want to charge. And you can even offer it in multiple different billing options, whether it's monthly charges or every 3 month charges. So I'll just show you one example of, if you're charging them every 28 days and you choose to charge them $700 for this particular bundle of Hair Force One, semaglutide with B12, plus the NAD add-on. This is really slick how you're able to see each one of these monthly time points. You can see the whole timeline. You can see when they're going to get charged, and you'll see, based on how often they need the medication, that the Hair Force One will be ordered automatically every 2 months. As far as it'll auto generate a prescription that you'll submit. The semaglutide B12 and NAD would happen every 28 days. So it's a great way for you to keep track of that. If you're trying to do this manually, God help you, you're going to screw it up, especially if the patient, like, several months in, before they got one of their medications, they asked for a refund. We'll be able to automatically show you, okay, well, you get a refund for the medication you haven't gotten yet from your last payment, but you don't get a refund for these medications you've already received. And then here's another example of an option 3 where you're charging them every 84 days, every 3 months. And the benefit to them to pay up front for those 3 months is that you're going to give them a discount of 12%. Totally made up number. You can choose to discount it or not. Totally up to you. But then again, you see how they're getting charged every 3 months on this timeline. And then you'll see the medication prescriptions that are being auto generated for you to submit after you review them. And you can just see how that's all keeping track. And we don't send them all the medication all at once during that 3 months, because God forbid they submit a chargeback, you've lost all that money. They only get the medications that are due for on day 0, and then 28 days later, and then 28 days later. That's when those prescriptions will auto generate and you'll submit them. So we keep you protected that way. So pretty slick on how you can keep track of all this that you just can't do on your own unless you're stubborn and you think you can do it, but you'll screw it up. And then when you want to send it to a patient, these are all fake names. But when you're in the back end and you want to send the patient a particular treatment plan, you just go to add patient, or you choose one of your existing patients, and you put in their demographic information. If they haven't already submitted an online questionnaire and they've put in their demographic information, you can put in as little as you want, their name and their phone number. You don't even have to put in their email address. You add it to your account, and then you send it to the patient. And then take a look at what they get. They get a text. We don't send it to their email, which got, because that could go to their spam. We send them a text. They click on that link, and then it brings them to this beautiful page, mobile-friendly page with your logo up at the top, and shows them all of those different billing options that you're offering them between billing option 1, 2, or 3. They can view their subscription. They can then see that there's that add-on where they choose to put it on or not, and then we verify who they are. They put in their number. They get a personal wellness key. They put that in. And then they see all of the information. They have to agree to various consents. They make the purchase through our high risk payment processor, and then they can see the different medications that have been included into their stack. You can't do this right now with your EMR. This is what patients are getting used to from the perspective of Roe and Hims. They're used to seeing that in any of these other direct to consumer websites. They're used to seeing a nice mobile friendly experience like this. And it gets even better than that. They can then tap around in their screen after they purchase it. They can see who your practice is, so they can like make sure they're calling you. And it doesn't say Dr. Well at the top. It'll have your practice and it'll have your provider's picture up at the top. They'll see who their care team is and they'll see where you're located. Because that's the other thing that makes you different than a direct to consumer website is they're being connected to an actual practice, not some website. And then they just tap around and they can look at different things within this back end. They can see when their next payment is, when their next prescription is. They see all the medications that are included in their stack. And then they also see the dosages for each step up that they would take if they continue on the medication program. They even see the number of units that they would do. So the thing that's really awesome about this is that they're not having to call you all the time. It's like, oh, remind me what my dose is. They can go into their consumer portal and they'll see how many units they need with that particular formulation to give themselves. And then they have the option of pausing their subscription or changing their billing date. And this is all done automatically. And you're alerted to those changes in the back end. So you know that. But the thing is, you're not going to accidentally send out medication to a patient until they get charged and it auto generates a prescription. So you're never going to, because that's another thing probably with your compounding pharmacies, you know, submit the order, you put it on refill, and you forget whether the patient actually pays you for those subsequent months. So you might be sending that patient medication, or I'm reminding you of it now, and you're running to your compounding pharmacy portal to cancel those refills on that patient who just canceled. And that's a hassle because you're going to forget that, and you're going to end up paying the compounding pharmacy for medication that you never got paid for. And then because they purchased a bundle, you'll go back in the back end and you'll see all of those three prescriptions auto generated in the back end. And you go through each one of those medications, review them, decide where you're shipping it to the patient or shipping it to your practice. And then you click submit and it sends it to the patient. Excuse me, sends the order to the pharmacy, who then sends it to the patient or to your practice. What's also really cool that also is going to require you to be able to step up and compete is that the patients are probably always calling you asking about their tracking information. Well, when their order is fulfilled and the pharmacy is shipping it out, they're going to automatically get a text where they're going to be able to click on a link. It brings them to their consumer portal where they'll be able to see the medication is on their way to see them. This is all done automatically. You don't have to try to figure this out on your own. Where they're going to see the medication is in transit. They're going to see how much it was for. The fact that they're getting renewed automatically every month, and they're going to be able to see what the practice again to reiterate your connection with that patient. They'll see the practice, the pharmacy it's coming from, and they'll see the tracking number, what carrier it is, when it was sent to the pharmacy. They'll see the whole package history, when the order was sent to the pharmacy, when it's in transit, out for delivery, and delivered. All of that. They're not going to have to log into a UPS portal to do all that. This will all automatically be delivered to that patient. And then they'll be able to see that, as far as when it's being prepared and everything like that. So very, very exciting. The other thing I want to just highlight, this is just another example of just another stack where you're combining, semaglutide with enclomiphene for hormone replacement therapy. It's a selective estrogen receptor modulator, BPC 157, bupropion, naltrexone. I'm just highlighting here that you can put as many medications in the stack or as an add-on as you want, and it's just going to get more and more complex if you're trying to do this manually. But you can invent any stack you want, and it can go to whatever, and it'll be pulling medication from all sorts of pharmacies, but you're not going to have to log into any of those pharmacies. You just log into the Dr. Well portal. So the other thing about this is if you're really trying to do this, if you're stubborn and trying to do this on your own, you need to realize how fragile your program is. Because what happens when your program coordinator calls in sick, or what happens even worse when they quit? That program coordinator is handling all of this manually. That they, if the patient subscribes, they've got to go manually put this into the EMR and the pharmacy portal. And then when it's time, you got to submit that prescription to the pharmacy portal. And then the first time after you put in their name, you've got to go through the drop downs, find the medication, type in a SIG, and maybe it remembers it for the next time. But they've got to do all that manually the first time. And the pharmacy portal doesn't track whether they paid for it or not. So that's the other thing you got to keep up. And then the meds are going to ship regardless, whether you got paid for them or not. And if the payment's failed, then you got to, your office staff is a bounty hunter. They got to track down the patient, get the payment. And then the patient just goes to you, never hear from you. There's no retention tracking. They just disappear. And you're just like, your program is slowly dwindling away to nothing because they're going to either direct to consumer or they're going to a provider like me that gives them all of this information in an automated way. They always know where their medication is. They're getting more access to more variety of medications. And so that's why your portal ends up your program dwindles more and more. And then of course, if your coordinator's gone, the entire workflow collapses. So you need some automation built into your system, reminders built into your system, so anybody in the office can handle it. And where does that go to? Is that, well, that ends up losing you money. So if you're thinking of like 440 patients, monthly program fee, that you have average retention of 5 months, you're going to have failed payment rate of 10% at least. You've got the admin hours doing this manually, the staff cost associated with that. In your current state without structure, that you think you're making $191,000, but you're losing money to the failed payments. You're losing money to the missed retention and the lifetime value. And then you're losing money to all the extra admin cost, overhead cost for that. Whereas if you have some structure and some automation and some reminders, and anybody can do this, you're going to have a greater payment recovery. Sure, you'll still have some payments fail, but you'll have better payment recovery because our system will automatically send out a reminder for them to update their credit card. You'll keep more patients because it's more automated. You'll have staff working on other things, so you'll be dedicating less money to those of staff to your particular program. And then, of course, coming through us, you'll have a significant savings in the cost of goods, and then you'll have a net annual gain with a structured program that you wouldn't have on your own. So anyway, that you might feel like, you've got this high touch practice and you feel like, what, I'm not competing against the Rose and the Hims of the world. Those direct to consumer platforms. I'm not trying to take care of thousands of patients. I'm just, I have my patients. But that's not the point. That the patients are coming to you because they like that high touch involvement, but they're going to get frustrated if they're having to always call you to give them a credit card or update a credit card or coming to get the medication. You're competing against the Rose and the Hims of the world from the patient interface perspective, the user interface, making it easy to use, making it easy to automate, making it easy for them to get their tracking information. Those are all things that patients are looking for now. So you need easy patient enrollment. You need the high risk payment processing that's going to shut you down if you're using your EMR or Stripe or Square or PayPal. Those are not high risk payment processors. They are high risk services. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're going to know a friend or yourself where your credit card processing is going to get shut down because you're not using a high risk payment processor. You need the subscription automation, the streamlined management of ordering the meds, keeping track of the stacks from multiple pharmacies via one portal. You can't do that manually. And if you want to grow or even maintain your program, you're going to need a low friction way of having those patients stay within your program, keeping that workflow nice and easy for them. And then the lowest cost of goods, you'll still be able to maintain your profit margin despite that downward pressure on price. So if you obviously, I'm excited. There's lots of questions. I'm ready to get started answering those questions. But here's a couple QR codes. If you want to learn more about GLP-1 squared amino meds, that's the top QR code. I'll bring you to this website. And if you want to learn more about it, you can request a demo about amino meds and the Dr. Well platform. You can't have one without the other. You can't order amino meds without Dr. Well. So when you request a demo, you'll be getting a demo for both. But that's what that top QR code goes to, or just go to aminomeds.com. You can email me at drkaplan@drwell.com. And then the bottom QR code, that is a QR code for you to sign up for a webinar that Dr. Well's putting on Friday, 2 days from now, showing you the new Dr. Well platform. And all the things I showed you, we'll be going through all of that again, and how easy it is to get your staff enrolled into the new platform for all their different users, permissions, and credentials, how easy it is to send a link to a patient to develop, to create these templates. We've created all these templates for you. You can just pick and choose and then adjust them as you need to. So everything's customizable, but you don't have to create a template from scratch. We've probably already thought of it for you. You just adjust the dose, adjust the price, adjust what medications you want in it, but at least you have a starting point for your template. But anyway, that's the QR code on the bottom is to register for that and learn more about it. So let's get to these questions, Katya. I have the Q&A in front of me. If you
Oh,
want me
perfect.
to start going through them.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. One person mentioned, hello from Anchorage, Alaska. I just got my license in Alaska. I'm now licensed in all 50 states and DC. So very exciting. Now going for Puerto Rico, going for the trifecta, for lack of a better word. Anyway, so the first question here, want to know how Trump RX and Amazon are doing in this space. Well, they're there, but there's a whole nother presentation I have that let me pause that. There's a whole nother presentation I have where we talk about Trump RX. And Trump RX as a website, it actually works really well. It's like not buggy compared to like, the healthcare.gov with Obamacare. And this isn't a political comparison. I'm just telling you, one was really buggy, the other's not. The thing is with Trump RX, if you ever go through it, and I've counted it, it takes you 12 screens before you get to the page where you can actually fill out a questionnaire. If you're trying to go through a telehealth provider to order Zepbound or whatever, it takes 12 screens because first you have to choose the drug you're interested in. You have to choose the area of treatment you want, whether it's like weight loss or diabetes care because you're going through these big pharmaceutical companies. Then you got to choose whether you want to do in person or telehealth. And so let's say you do, if you choose to do in person, that's going to be even worse, I'm sure. But if you choose to do telehealth, then you've got to choose a telehealth partner. And then once you get to that, on the 12th screen, you finally get to the part where you fill out a questionnaire and then they get back to you. And remember, on those, that you have to have the indication for those medications. So if you have a BMI of 27 and you have no comorbid conditions, you're not, even though you're paying cash, you're not going to be able to get those name brand drugs. So which is why the compounding pharmacy route is so much easier. But anyway, so Trump RX, if that's what you're asking about, Amazon, they're offering these medications, but the experience is so much easier if you're filling out the on online questionnaire through Dr. Well for your practice. You'll have a dedicated online questionnaire. I didn't go through that because that wasn't really the focus of this presentation. But if you're a Dr. Well provider, we'll give you a link that will be your asynchronous consultation questionnaire. It'll have your logo at the top. Patient, you can have that button, that link on your website. They click on that, they fill out a questionnaire. You get those answers. You then respond to them through the one-way messaging with a connection to a package you want to offer them. And then they get a text. They click on the link. They read your response to their questionnaire. And then they can click on a link and get the medication, pay for it online. You get notified, and then you submit that prescription to the compounding pharmacy. So whatever they can do from telehealth perspective, you can compete with them with Dr. Webb because we've created that asynchronous consultation for you. But it's easier through you because they're not going to have to go through 12 screens to get to that point. So the peptides such as Retta, GHKCU, legal dispense from 503A. So not Retta. Retta is not FDA approved yet. It is not legal. If you're getting Retta, you're not, it's coming from, it's research grade. There's no legal standing for you right now to offer Retta to patients. If the patient gets sick, you have no legal standing whatsoever. And that's why we don't offer Retta through our platform because it's not FDA approved. Now you may say, oh, well, the GHKCU and the peptides aren't legal. Well, that's different because there's not some big pharmaceutical company that's driving that through bunches of clinical trials and is trying to get it FDA approved. With the peptides, they're in a very precarious place right now. We're actually having another webinar next Wednesday with some attorney partners of ours talking about how you can legally, no, how you can safely compliantly offer peptides in your practice. But with GHKCU, all the other typical peptides, they've been taken off the Category 2 list, but not added onto the Category 1 list. So they're in this limbo. But the difference is, from all of our 503A pharmacy partners, there appears to be no enforcement actions against those pharmacies. And then in July, they're going to have this go to the CPAC panel to talk about this, or PCAC panel, excuse me, to discuss the putting it on Category 1. But in the meantime, there's no enforcement. And so that's why we are offering peptides through the Dr. Well platform for our provider partners to offer them, but not Retta. And we are getting it from a 503A pharmacy because it is in that limbo. It's not illegal, but it's not legal, but it's not being enforced. And so it's it's a calculated risk on the pharmacy's part, and if you choose to. Then let's see, continuing on. Oh, lots of questions here. Is there a link where we can share to our patients to sign up before their appointment? Oh yeah, absolutely. So a couple different routes to do this. So if a patient calls into your office or texts your office, if you don't have texting on your office, you need to have texting. But if a patient reaches out to your office and says they're interested in your tirzepatide, you can send them a link through the platform. You just have their number because it's caller ID. You put in their number, it'll text them a link for the medication. They can then see the medication, they can see the price, they can see the dosing protocol. It's all there for them, like I showed you on this previous page that was so pretty. Yeah, I'll just go to this page. They'll be able to see this where they'll click on that link and they'll be able to read all about that package you're offering them. And then if you have different billing options, they'll be able to see that. And then they can purchase. And you say, well, if they haven't actually filled out any paperwork yet, how can they purchase? Well, just because they purchase it doesn't mean the medication has automatically been sent to them. So if you know the patient, then you already have a medical history with them. But if you don't have their medical history, then you can then send them a link to fill out a smart consult, which is going to have your logo on it. They fill out all that medical history, and so then once you see that and you see they're a candidate, then you can go ahead and submit their prescription if they already paid for the medication. If they haven't paid for the medication, you can send them a link with the smart consult. So multiple different routes where you can send them a link to look at the package before they sign up, and then also send them a link to fill out the paperwork, the online paperwork. So really, really convenient. What pharmacies will this be coming from? Um, so you will not find out about any of these pharmacies unless you're a Dr. Well provider. That's our intellectual property. That is very highly protected. You will see the names of the pharmacies when the vials get delivered, but you will not be able to reach out to those pharmacies on your own if you're a Dr. Well provider. That is all very much within the agreement that you can only use those compounding pharmacies. Now, if you knew about them beforehand, well, no, we can't stop that. But you're not going to probably know about them beforehand. And even if you did know about them, you would not be getting the same rates as we're getting. So for that particular person who's asking, you'll have to trust that they're all 503A pharmacies, which they are. As I mentioned, I got 50 licenses plus DC, and I wouldn't put my license at risk to be using research grade, quacky pharmacies. And you can get the certificates of analysis after you sign up with Dr. Well. You'll be able to get access to them, but you will not be able to use those pharmacies. Once you find, unless you're using them through Dr. Well, and you certainly won't be able to get the low cost of goods that you're getting through Dr. Well. So it'd be silly to not utilize it because why would you waste money by paying more for medications? So continuing on, I thought you had doctors in every state to run telehealth. I want to be 100% hands off. Well, okay. I can't tell from the person asking if you're a doctor or not. So there's different things we can do. If you are not wanting to do any of this, you absolutely can use Dr. Well. We do have providers that are licensed in all 50 states and DC, aside from myself. And if you want to utilize us as your medical director, that's fine. There's a totally different program where we can work through as like an MSO. It all depends on whether you're a business entity or whether you're a nurse practitioner or a PA. That's a longer discussion, but we absolutely can support that just legally. And so we would connect you with our attorneys, and there might have to be an MSO created where we would have a collaborative agreement with that MSO, and we can see all your patients for you. And that can work, but that's an additional fee. That's an additional fee for that particular program. But if you're a provider and you're wanting to do this, then yeah, the cost of that is $8,000 a year, and then there's no ongoing fees after that because it's $8,000 to use the platform. And then what happens is whenever you're using the medication, sending the patient the link, they're signing up for the medication, we're processing that payment. And then when you submit that prescription, we know what the cost of goods are. So then we're withholding the cost of goods for the pharmacy. And then we're withholding 2.9% for that highest tier, the 2.9% for the high risk payment process for the credit card fees. And then we're sending you the net revenue. So there's no ongoing out of pocket cost to you. You don't even get a compounding pharmacy bill. We're paying the compounding pharmacy bill, which is why we're able to get the lowest cost of goods on those compounding pharmacies. So that's the cost to providers to use our platform, $8,000 annually. And if you're wanting to, our providers to be your medical director and you're not doing anything, that's a totally different additional fee, which if you go to any other platform, they're going to charge you a fee, but they're also going to charge you a consult fee for every single consult that medical director sees for you. They're going to charge you an ongoing, like flat monthly fee. If you're using us as a medical director, there's no ongoing fee. It's just the fee to use the platform and then the fee to set up that for us to do the collaborative agreement with your MSO. You'll still have to do your MSO and all that good stuff on the legal side, but this is definitely outside of the scope of this, so I don't want anybody to get confused. If you're a provider, you have prescription writing ability, if you want to use this platform, it's $8,000 and no ongoing out-of-pocket cost. Okay, so next question is, and keep the questions coming, but we got a lot of good questions here. How many prescriptions on average need to be ordered to break even on the monthly expense to use the platform? Oh yeah, it's a great question. So if you are prescribing 21 prescriptions for an average of $500, and that could be bundles and things like that. But if you're charging $500 per prescription, if you have 21 enrollments, 21 packages, 21 prescriptions, so that could be 7 prescriptions per month for 3 months, or it could be 21 patients in the first month. If you do that, your net revenue will cover the investment. So that's 21 patients. for that to break even before it's all just net revenue. So if you already have an existing network of patients, then you're going to be generating revenue right off the bat if you already have a network. And we have an importer to make it easy for you to import your patients into the platform so you don't have to do it individually. Okay, next, do you need to pay $8,000 per location? No, no, no. This is actually pretty cool. Right now, it's not always going to be like this, but right now it's $8,000 for as many locations as you want and for as many providers as you want. At some point, we are going to start charging per provider. So if you get in now, you'll get grandfathered into that. But there will be a point, well, we're never going to charge for multiple locations, but there will be a point where if you have a certain number of providers, you will get charged per provider. But as of this moment, that $8,000 covers all your locations and all of your providers. But that won't last. I can guarantee you that per provider, no charge will not last forever. The per location will never. There's no reason for us to charge per location because your locations aren't necessarily making money. It's your providers that are. Okay, what other questions do we have? What else are you seeing? I'm just looking at the chat. There may actually also be a Q&A page too.
Yeah, they're all the questions are in the chat. So this is, yeah, if
Okay,
anyone has
great.
any final
Uh,
questions.
Yeah, no, this is great. No, it's always a pleasure talking to everybody. If there's you have if you have more questions, please answer. I'm here for you. But I'm gonna also bring you back to this other page where yeah, so there are the QR codes. You can learn more about Dr. Well, Amino Meds in the top QR code. And then the bottom QR code, you can learn about the new platform that we're unveiling on Friday. It's already working. I'm already using it in my practice, so it's not like we're hoping to release it. It's like already exists. And it makes all of this possible with these stacks and everything. But the one portal that already exists with our existing platform, ordering from multiple pharmacies through one platform, through one portal that already exists. Packages already exist in our existing platform, but it's much easier on the new platform. But this is already up and running and ready to go. So yeah, it's all very exciting.
Yeah,
Uh,
this is great. Thank you.
yeah. Do you have any questions, Katya?
No, I'm good. This has been really helpful. I think everyone's excited to see the new platform once you have it launched.
Yeah, yeah. So please sign up, take a picture of that QR code before we end, because you won't have access to it afterwards. And for everybody who's asking, yes, you'll get a recording of the of this presentation, and then of course just reach out to us if you want to see a demo of how everything works.
Yes, and we'll the link that the QR codes go to, we'll make sure that that's in the email too, just so everybody has it for reference later. But yes, we'll send that out along with the recording.
Great. And 6 minutes to spare, unless we
I
have
know
another
this is
question.
great. Love it. All
All
right. Well,
right.
hope everybody enjoys the rest of their week, and we will send we'll send everything out at the latest tomorrow. So look
Great.
forward in your
Thanks so much. Thanks
inbox.
for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Okay, bye.